a certain point, you may feel like you want to release from the breath. This is welcome. But we can also continue that breath, keeping it long, keeping it very slow, seeing if you can continuously slow it down and feel into every cell, every increment of the breath as it moves in and as it moves out. Coming into this silence and just simply resting here for a moment. Simply find yourself rested in this peace, dropping into the heart, tuning to yourself. And connecting that attention and that awareness to every cell of the body, simply being here with yourself. And as you feel complete here, we can slowly bring the attention back, opening the eyes when you like. Wonderful. Alrighty. So as an initial note, when we come to the connection or the topic of well-being and our immune system, um, we must come to a clarity of the importance of our breath, the importance of the elements as a whole. And in a time where our immune systems are being potentially threatened, let's say, from an external virus, it's a vital task for each of us to be aligned and to be connected to the natural elements. So now that we have spring coming, obviously we're going to have more of an opportunity to connect with the sun, to connect with the earth and trees through our bare hands or through our bare feet in the soil. There's more of an opportunity to connect with moving water. Although we generally always have access to water, it's not always from, a natural source. And but the one constant we have, no matter what, what time of the year it is our breath. And so the simple breath practice that we just did is one that I'm going to continue to recommend, in the sense of us being connected to it in a very slow and a very rhythmic and a very expanded fashion, where we can move the breath through our bodies in different ways, whether that's up and down the spine, like some of you have done with me before, whether it's using Tai Chi, using the hands, using the movements of our body and the hands and the breath simultaneously, or it's the simplicity of what we did, which is, in the yogic system, we would look at our lifespan being dependent on the amount of breaths that we take. And the movement of our mind, or the movement of our brain, and how many thoughts are coming and going, is going to be dependent on how fast or slow our breath is. So if our breath is extremely fast, then the amount of thoughts we're going to have is generally going to be quite a lot more. So, if we're having really shallow breaths, so we're not able to keep a consistency with the rhythm of our breath, a conscious awareness of the breath, then this is where we have, the movements of the mind come in so many different ways and kind of get out of order. And, we have an endless amount of thought streams that come in. Now, obviously, we're speaking on human design today. So, we're going to relate a lot of things back to, the energy of how our design chart looks. And for many of you, either an open head or an open head and an open ajna center, you're going to have a lot of openness in the thought stream, a lot of openness, a lot of excess thoughts, a lot of questions, a lot of ideas moving through. And not to say that people who have it defined are not going to have that. It's just to say that it's going to be potentially more extreme. So when we're doing a breath practice like this, where we're breathing in extremely slowly through the body and feeling into every cell, you really it's almost like every increment of breath moving in through the nose, you're aware of where and what that breath is doing. It's like there's no breath coming into you that has gone like unlooked at. It's like a security guard in allowing people into the building. Nobody goes into the building without there being an awareness of who exactly is coming in and where exactly they're going. And this is how we're, in a sense, treating the breath in this conscious practice. Is we're moving the breath inwards, and we're experiencing the breath in a way where every ounce of that not only the oxygen, but the energy that you're moving in is being recognized. It's being appreciated, it's being seen, and it's being directed in some form, right? And then likewise, when we're exhaling out, there's a clear understanding and connection that we'll have to our energetic body and our subtle body, where we can move the breath inward, experience the rejuvenation, the clarity, the vitality that breath brings, and then we're moving it outward and seeing what is also needing to be moved out. And what will tend to happen is, when we can slow the breath down, at a certain point, you can get the breath to a place where you're almost about 30 seconds in, 30 seconds out. This is kind of in many ways in the yogic system, that would be a goal, to be able to do, not necessarily all the time, but to have just one breath per minute is where we're really going to start to come to a supreme state in our body, in our immunity, and our vitality, our energy level, because it's the perfect, if we look at all the things that we take to survive, breath would be maybe one of the fundamental, with the other elements, the fundamental energy, if not the most fundamental. And so if we can be the most frugal and efficient with the most important resource that we have accessible, then this is what actually starts to relate to a fearlessness within our energy of safety and security and well-being within our world and within our life, simply because if we've come to the most efficiency with the one thing that we simply cannot go that long without, then when we're faced with other things that we can't go long without, like right now, you know, we don't have our job, let's say, we can't connect with people as much physically, you know, maybe there's a shortage of food for some people, you know, entertainment, you know, so many different things at different levels of what we consume and different levels of importance of what we consume. We're less and less affected by the risks, the lack of safety that may create, the energy of fear that emerges, all of this. There's going to be much less of a you know, affected energy by those things. And this is where we can remain in a deep space of peace, a deep space of clarity, a deep space of openness within our entire experience, where there's a true fearlessness, because in a sense we could say death has been faced now. You know, you face the ultimate fear, which is to move the breath to a place where it's only coming in one time a minute, let's say. And like I mentioned, this is not something that needs to be consistent all the time, but when we can practice consciously more often than not in a way where we're slowing down the breath, we are practicing, you know, one of the highest laws of the universe, which is the law of efficiency. And this is much of what we're coming to in the planet as a whole right now, and why we're faced with many of these, many of not only the virus, but many other catastrophes that are going to continue to be presented by Mother Earth, because of the lack of efficiency that we have demonstrated potentially with the Earth energy, right? The Earth, the Mother, that gives us endlessly resources. But of course, if we're getting endless resources given to us and we take that for granted, or there's a lack of efficiency with that, then it is just the simple teaching, let's say in the Bible, which is, you know, if there's no gratitude or appreciation for what one has, then naturally what one has will be taken away. And this is where gratitude, in a way of writing what you're grateful for, meditating upon it, is initial layers to the practice, which are very valuable. And this is a beautiful time to be in that practice of gratitude, especially when things are being taken away, and they're gradually more so, you know, maybe more lockdowns, or not able to move even more than what we have right now. Gratitude is a very important practice. So writing that down, meditating upon it, affirming that within your mind, affirming it outwardly to the people, places, and things that we would like to bring that vibration to. This is all extremely valuable. Now, to practice that gratitude at a level by which the subconscious begins to get completely in tune and online with, this would be the practice of continuing to slow this breath down and acknowledge this breath, acknowledge the simple energy that it resides in your heart, you know, the peacefulness that is present here. This would be the opportunity to explore in this way. So this is our initial message for today, where we start with this breath, and we'll come back to this. This song is available also. I posted it. Like I said, I made it this week, so the energies are present for this time. But what I'd like to do maybe right now is we can just open up for anyone who feels any a call to share anything in specific, any clear intentions or topics that you'd like covered in relationship to just this overall intention we're setting for this afternoon. Let's keep it brief, because there's a number of us here. So if anyone does want to share anything, see if you can unmute your mic yourself. But if not, then just write that you'd like to speak in the comments. Or if you don't want to speak and you just want to write in the comments, then you're welcome to. Oh, I'm going to allow members to unmute themselves. There we go. So you guys can unmute yourselves, hopefully one at a time. And those tuning in from elsewhere, then if you want to share in the comments, yeah, your intentions or any specific questions that are arising right now. then we can get into it. If there's nothing, I do have some specific things that we're going to go into. Go ahead, Ali. You should be able to unmute. Okay, I will unmute you. There we go.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I really resonated with the law of efficiency and slowing down the breath, because I feel that with this quarantine, self isolation, whatever you want to call it, has been a great opportunity for myself and probably everybody to free yourselves from the attachments of the social game, or the overconsumption, or any neediness. So yeah, just thank you.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. It's an important piece. There's some topics I wanted to dive into. Potentially today, we may have another extra session to go into this on just the energy dynamics of gift economy, energy dynamics of how we're creating abundance in this new paradigm, stepping into this space, because it truly is a grounding element right now where, if your goals have been to achieve certain successes and achievements in your life and to create certain manifestations and all of this, it's not to say that these things are no longer going to be the case. We're all going to have our natural destined path to adhere to and to follow, though we have to recognize that if the intention is coming to achieve success and to climb the hierarchical ladder and all of this in a space now where it's seen very clearly that those things have very little value, when we're all humbled back to the simplicity, we start to have to get real with ourselves as to what our true intention is behind the things that we may be doing and the actions we are taking and the goals that we may have, the desires we're looking to fulfill, and see if they're really true to the alignment within ourselves. And this is a lot of what and why the human design system is so vital and valuable in this time, because it gives a map and a trajectory on how we align ourselves to our true nature and what we are designed to naturally step into in regards to our path, in regards to what we feel most aligned to create, relationships we'd like to be aligned with, these types of things. So yeah, there's a number of things there. So it's a good thing that you kind of pointed to that. Thanks, Ellie.
Thank you.
Yes. Anybody else? Also raise your hand. I could see it in the video, but if not, I agree with Ali. I feel more free. Yeah, this is something that, paradoxically, in all the so-called fear and things that are being spread, and the intensity of the situation, naturally there are a lot of people who are passing as well to this virus. I mean, we have to take into account that there are many people passing this planet every single day to many other types of reasons as well, including starvation, which is I think around 200,000 or so people per day. So we have to just keep in mind and keep ourselves grounded with the realities of what really goes on this planet, while also keeping in mind that yes, a virus can be a threat, and we have to take certain precautions. And one thing that is something to mention, and I feel like it's an important point in relation to the human design topic, is that when we come into the recognition that 51% of the population, and likely many of you, are going to be emotional authority, right? Emotional authority in human design is those who are in their constant emotional waves, right? You are the beings that have the solar plexus defined, and you have consistent waves of emotion that are moving through you. The challenge of one who, whether yourself or friends that you may know or family member, the challenge that is going to be faced with this emotional authority is making decisions within the emotional wave. Meaning, when we are peaked in the realms of excitement, very intense in our excitement, there are decisions that may be being made, or we're in the depths of our fear and the lower emotions on the other side of that wave, making decisions on this end. Because half of the population is emotional authority, and the majority of the population is not necessarily living in alignment with the natural self, there's going to be a ton of decision making in these emotional waves. And when there's decision making coming from the not self, this just adds to the not self within the collective as a whole. So as we are magnifying. So those who are in the emotional wave and making decisions in this emotional wave are going to naturally be constantly faced with their own not self theme. So for your generators, it's going to be lack of fulfillment, that true frustration, gears grinding. Manifestors is going to be anger. Projectors is going to be that feeling of bitterness. And then reflectors are just going to be disappointed with everything. You know, the energy with this not self is going to magnify across the entire collective. So we're going to see the results of this through what we see through the media and through so many making very intense, irrational, emotional decisions, and adding to that not self energy within the collective. Then those who are having an undefined solar plexus, so you likely are either sacral definition, maybe self-projected, maybe you're splenic, or multiple others. You naturally, if you are experiencing an undefined solar plexus, then naturally there's going to be the taking in of that defined energy and that not self energy and amplifying those emotions, right? Amplifying the emotions from the collective and feeling the intensity of that fear, right? Feeling the intensity of decision making that's coming from an emotional place. Right. And in my sphere, I generally see the entire wave of situations, especially when it comes to world situations like this. So I will see, I'll be able to perceive, like many of you, the fear and the precautionary and the physical dimension. So we'll be able to perceive the fourth dimensional perspectives of conspiracies and world governments in control and various powers that may have been influencing certain agendas with this disease. And then there will also be a higher dimensional perspective where we come into a recognition of the truth in everything, seeing that this virus and the situation is really just a mirror of a collective purification and a movement into a newer reset, a true spring, if you will. We're all coming into spring. This is like a spring on steroids, So we're coming into a true reset in a higher dimensional sense, in an energetic sense, where we have to, and we're forced to align back with ourselves. There's really no option otherwise. And if there isn't the choice to do that, and especially for all of you on this call, likely having looked at your chart already, maybe some of you have gotten readings or dived into the human design system, the energetic vibration of that is being assimilated already. So just like regardless of human design, if we're coming into an awareness of our own path, the awareness of one's own natural way of being, what feels natural, what feels aligned, and what doesn't, right? As we come into the nature of our heart, the contrast of when we come into misalignment or when we move in directions where we are not feeling ourselves, we're not feeling maybe ourselves in a relationship, maybe we're not feeling ourselves in a certain work environment, maybe with a certain topic at hand, we find ourselves getting into conversations or arguments or opinions that, again, we do not necessarily just feel this natural self, right? This ease, this simple way of being. This is because there's an awareness now, and that awareness brings a more intense degree of contrast. You're able to see more easily where there's misalignment, right? Where you feel like yourself going, upstream, if you will. Right? And this will be depicted for each of you through your not self energy. And so going back to the emotional center, for those with this authority, naturally it is always coming back to waiting longer. That emotional being is always designed to wait longer. Wait longer so that you can make decisions from a neutral place. And you will feel the neutrality in your body. You will feel the ease and the naturalness within the body. And though for someone who has this undefined, like say for a sacral being who has a sacral definition, you will already feel the gut response inside of you. There will already be a clarity. There will already be a yes or a no. Sometimes you have to wait, but there generally will be that clarity. However, the conditioning may come from the empathy that you're picking up from so many other beings, so much other emotional energy around you. And this is a very important point because for any of us who have any sort of undefined centers, and I would assume everyone in this chat and likely watching elsewhere is going to have undefined centers somewhere, unless you're a reflector, and there's one reflector here. So Suzanne, you won't have to deal with this as much. But for those with the undefined centers, naturally you're always going to be picking up this definition. You will be picking up this conditioning within your being, and that conditioning will range in different ways depending on the center. But it's very important for us to recognize how and where this conditioning is coming into our experience, because this is the place in which we'll be most pulled away from our natural authority and our natural way of being. And this is where we really come into the depth with human design to explore the nature of how any specific center that we have undefined is going to be not only the place where we are susceptible to the most conditioning, but it's also going to be the place where we will gain the most wisdom, right? So for those beings who have the undefined solar plexus in this time, it's really about being able to hold space for those that are going through intense flows of emotional energy, right? And I know a couple of you in this class do have that. And so the undefined energy there is really about how can we hold space for those that are experiencing very intensive emotions. And of course, this is going to be the case for anyone who's living in an alignment with themselves, because vibrationally speaking, when you're in the vibration of your aligned self, you feel the naturalness of every word, thought, and action, right? Like you don't feel like you're stretching towards anything, nor you're resisting anything in particular. And the moment that you notice that there's something you're stretching for, or there's something that you're pushing away, you can come into a meditative awareness of that. Right? And so naturally the question is, how do we do that? The breath technique we did in the beginning is a beautiful practice because it really does get you very centered in a clarity of what is needing your attention, right? What is pulling at you, where you're coming from a place now after doing this breath work that you don't actually need to rush to anything or resist anything, because you can feel the natural alignment and peacefulness within your being. And if we can feel the natural alignment and peacefulness within our being, then again, the contrast of things that we feel like we're rushing into or we're pushing away are more obvious, right? They bring more of a clarity. They come with more of a clear illusionary essence to them, right? Instead of when you're in the depth of emotion, you're in the depth of the intensity and the fear and everything's being kind of, it's like you're in a washing machine, then what you're rushing to or what you're resisting is not going to look so obvious. Right? These are things that you may not really know. You may already be in it. You're already taken by the momentum of it, and it seems tantalizing. It seems like it's going to take you to a better place, when in reality, it's illusionary. You know, we come back to the breath, we come back to feeling, we come back to awareness, we come back to the natural alignment with ourselves, right? And so, beyond the practice we've been into, this is going to come back to strategy and authority over and over, right? What is your strategy and authority? So it'd be cool, actually, if everyone wanted to write in what their design was. Your profile number, I'll start so you guys know. 6'3", emotional manifester. You guys can each write, and even those elsewhere, you can write this as well, where you're from, where you're from, what planet you're from, but what your profile is. And this will give us at least some context just in this group, who we are. Four, 6 emotional manifesting generator. There we go. Forget my numbers. Okay. Cool. So again, if anyone does want to share anything as we're writing that in, I will welcome that. Any intentions, specific questions, or just overall things that you're wanting to share right now, because it's a good time for that. We're probably not able to share too much overall with others, at least physically. I feel like all my decisions are really emotional. Well, yeah, this is an important one, Fiona. And you know, it's going to come. Remember, the key thing with your experience overall in regards to human design is it really is an experiment, right? It really is an experiment in the sense that we will know where the misalignments are in our experience by way of us experiencing our not self theme. So again, for generators, it's going to be frustration. For manifestors, is going to be anger. Projectors is going to be bitterness. Reflectors is going to be disappointment. So that frustration as a generator is going to be simply as gears grinding. Gears are grinding, gears are grinding. Now, that's not always going to be right away, right? That can take its time. But as we continue to feel into the body, it's important for us to take all of these energies and to recognize how vitally individually they are for each of us. And the naturalness of a decision and the naturalness of our way, the naturalness of our unfolding is going to be in the direction of really what feels most natural. And when it doesn't feel natural, resistance will be the result. And that resistance, regardless if we're involved in using the human design system or not, resistance is going to come into play generally inward from our perception and the perception that we're holding through and towards any specific situation or relationship, opportunity, etc. It's just going to come with different tastes in between. So Isabel was mentioning that she doesn't have her chart, so I'm just going to line that up for her. But this, even if we're not involved in using human design or not, the beauty with human design is it brings a very detailed mechanic to each of us that's not so general, right? Not so general in the sense that we can take these generalized teachings and apply to them, all of us across the board, practicing the depth of our peace, the depth of our meditation, moving to a place of simply being aware of where we're reaching towards things or resisting other things, and finding ourselves balancing in a middle point where there truly is a resting in being and doing, right? Being and doing, recognizing that the moment that you feel called to act is the moment the action is already arising. This is where, to the degree in which there's an alignment with these two aspects of ourselves, is the degree in which you'll find yourself in that natural way of existing, the natural way of flow, going with the stream. And so for those with emotional authority, and Fiona mentioning that, okay, making a lot of emotional decisions, it's just simply recognizing how do those decisions result, and how do we experience that in our body. So initially, the trick and the potential trap with emotional authority is that we may make a decision in a very emotional place. And that emotion may continue to carry us in that emotion. Maybe we're really excited, make that decision, and you find yourself moving more and more in that excitement, and you move more and more into the decisions of that excitement, and more into the results of that excitement. And it takes you for a little bit. But more often than not, there will be a period where that will come back down, right? Where we won't feel so excited about that specific thing anymore. We won't feel so enriched about and really like lit up about the thing. You will start to experience the other side. And in the other side, there will be a clarity, a bigger lens that emerges, where all of a sudden now that excitement, it was kind of blinding you from other sides of the picture, from other things that had to be considered. And now you're having to consider them, certainly because you've already moved on that decision, right? There's already been a movement in that direction. And so the consideration now is coming from the lower end of that, which eventually will then move you back up. And so as you move through those waves, clarity, begins to emerge. And whether this is you as an emotional being for any of you or not, you're going to come across many people who are also this. So it's really important to understand, because it's a vital practice to be giving ourselves as emotional beings and to be giving others who are emotional beings more time to be making decisions, so that truly there can be a neutrality that emerges in the body. And I would say that for every type of authority, a neutral knowing is going to be really what we're all looking to focus upon. So if you're a sacral being and you're experiencing the gut response, or you're self-projected and you need to talk it out and you need to talk about your knowings with others, so you get that reflection and you come into that recognition, whatever approach that may change and that may be flexible, it's just recognizing that the fluidity of our decision making, it's like it shouldn't be this random spike, these random kind of experience, unless you're a splenic. And for splenic beings, it'll actually feel natural to do that. And that's why it's important, really, with this type of system, with human design or astrology, all this, it becomes common that we want to only learn about ourselves. right? We only want to learn about what our design is. And of course, this is the case about our individual self. We would want to learn that first. But it is quite important to actually understand the plethora of profiles, because you're going to meet with so many people who have this, right? You're going to come across so many different beings, likely in your friend circle and your family circle, who are going to be connected to different perspectives and different designs. And so if we do not have an awareness of the different designs, then you pretty much end up wanting to treat everyone like yourself, right? It's like generally we give the love that we most want to receive. And this is nice, right? We're giving love, but we each have different languages. We each have different ways in which we interact. We each have different ways in which we'd like to receive. So if we're not concurrent to that, if we're not aware of how that dynamic is, we either keep going in the way that we want to receive and we keep giving to others, and only some of those will want to receive in that way, and others will just not take it the same way as you likely will take it. Or we have an opportunity, and that opportunity is to be in a place where we can communicate the ways in which we are best designed to give and receive, and in the same way in the relationship, how the best way for this individual is to receive and give. And this goes on many different facets. This covers many different energies, because naturally these profiles are infinitely different for each of us, right? So going back to the splenic being, a splenic being who's very erratic, very in the now, very spontaneous, this may be very different for an emotional being who needs to take their time, right? Really allow for those waves to move. So coming back to everything here, specifically with the emotional decision-making, is understanding first it's an experiment. So there'll be ongoing opportunities to continue to refine this and see how are the decisions resulting? How do you feel about them after a little while? Are you starting to feel the frustration on things that you were acting out emotionally versus the things that you really did wait and you experience the depth of the emotional clarity and the neutrality? How then has it resulted with that? How do we feel in the natural alignment? And as for a generator, feeling that sense of fulfillment and satisfaction, feeling the momentum of that satisfaction, right? So I hope that gives a little bit of clarity there. But we can continue to dive into some of that, mainly because, half of you are going to have this. But don't limit the questions just to the human design. If there's other questions or topics that are just coming up overall, we can get into that. And if anyone else wants to share on video or audio, please do. I do welcome that for today. We'll look at everyone's. Yeah, Isabella, yeah, you can get your chart there. You may feel initially lost if you don't have your chart, but you'll get the drift over a little bit. We can't unmute ourselves. Okay, I thought I set that. I did, but it's not working. So here you go, Fiona.
Yeah, I don't know, I was resonating with a lot of the things you were saying about the emotional authority, and just, yeah, I guess I have a lot of questions that I've been working through, and just like, I find I follow those emotional waves a lot, and that's just how I kind of live my whole life in a way. I just follow the emotions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Usually it leads me in good places, but then I find I end up jumping into things really fast, and like relationship wise, and just now I'm kind of finding myself, and yeah, feeling a lot of emotion, but also a lot of doubt about what decisions I've made. Yeah, and just how to, yeah, I don't know, how to align more, and so I guess like how to channel that emotional authority in a way. So I find I do, yeah, there's like a fulfillment in following those emotions, but only when they're coming from like an aligned place. Yeah.
Totally. Totally. That's great, Fiona. And when you feel into that right now, like if we were to come into the acknowledgement of this doubt, and each of us, there may be certain energies that are coming up right now, with this situation, naturally it brings up a lot. It brings up a lot of different, it brings up the core of everything really for each of us. So Fiona, with this doubt, And if you want to share about it, you can. And each of us can do this, just acknowledging, where in the body do you feel that right now, if you do, and can we go there? Each of us, can we go to the place where there is that feeling of doubt, right? That feeling of potential frustration, that feeling of uncertainty, right? A true fear of the unknown. These are all energies, and each of us may have this differently. So I'm going to invite each of us to move into that. And if you want to share anything while we're doing this, or if you want to just stay to yourself, it's okay. You're unmuted again.
Am I? Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess like just what's present for me right now is that I've been in the midst of exploring like a life partnership, and it's feeling like really intense and emotional, but in a positive way, but also like there's a lot of me that's just kind of withdrawing and feeling like I just want to be by myself and like not have a partner. And so I guess just, yeah, it's like I'm trying to feel into it and understand how to how to align with that, and yeah, trust myself. But I feel just completely pulled in two different ways, and
yeah, that sounds a lot like emotional authority.
yeah.
Right? Like, these waves, right, that come, right? These waves of moving in one direction, waves of coming down the other direction. For the majority, we have to understand that for all the emotional beings will be experiencing this perpetually. We'll be experiencing the excitement that we have towards something, and then the other side, seeing the other side of that same coin.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And as we and so it's always a prescription for more waiting, more awareness, right? And I feel what's important, and we can all, and I feel like in a kind of a mini activation is moving through right now that we'll kind of all go into around the dynamic of new relationship and partnership and what this really looks like, right? It's important that we come into a clear recognition that all we're ever seeking is ourselves. All we're ever seeking is ourselves. And so when we come in contact with the things and the people and the situations in which most mirror ourselves, and this can extend into topics like twin flame relationships and soulmates and different other ideas like this, which we won't get into too much, but there is a validity to this, because anyone who's holding that energy to you is going to be a being who is mirroring yourself. So depending on where we're at on the path, and depending the degree of maturity we have on our path, there will be more intensive degrees of separation. So things that may seem like ourselves will seem more like ourselves than they would if we, as we come into a deeper sense of knowing, a deeper sense of clarity. Then we come into recognition, oh, well, everything, yes, is myself, but I'm not as maybe attracted or not as pulled to this specific thing. But as we continue to come into a more neutral space within our being, right, a place where we can truly align to the heart, to the fullness in the heart, to see that we truly have all of the love in which we are desiring here. And when it doesn't feel that way, there generally is a longing that's arisen, right? And that longing, we have to place our attention upon the longing, not upon what is being longed for. Understand? Right? Because when we're placing the attention on what's being longed for, this is like looking at the mirror and trying to put the makeup on the mirror. You can't do anything with that thing, because that thing is not actually what it is that not the issue, but the focus really is at that moment. So when we move inwards to source and to see what is the inner longing that's truly arising, right? That either is or isn't being fulfilled. Right? That could be termed expectation as well. That could be termed many things. But what is this inner longing that is actually arising, and where is that inner longing coming from? Right? Where is this inner longing coming from? And can we find ourselves at peace with this inner longing? And this is a process we can do just in this moment as we're coming into this. We're finding and tuning within ourselves where that inner longing, and you'll be able to source it in your body. You will be able to feel it A lot of times it's in the gut or in the solar plexus, the heart, right? Because these are where some of the core wounds are that may be beyond even just this lifetime, energies that are being held for many, many ages, many lifetimes, generations. These are collective wounds that are being held, right? So the sourcing is to see and to come to the clarity of the silent witnessing of this inner longing. Right? And to connect with this by simply just feeling that, being intimate with that. And this is the balancing upon our relationships, because it is not to say that we do not focus upon the naturally arising relationships we come across in our moment-to-moment experience and what we may be each facing in different ways right now, especially in these times, because those relationships that it is always the case that we will find the relationships that will bring us the deepest level of growth that is not always pleasant, but this will always be, especially as we get deeper on the path and we continue to align, they will continue to arise, they will continue to be brought forth, they will continue to be presented, and they will bring up the depth of this longing. It will reveal to you where and why and how this longing is being held, and how that potentially is being projected into the image of this other, and the potential imbalances that are created within the relationship of that other. The ping pong effect, where there may be a very intensive process of being together and then an intensive process of wanting to be alone. And, of course, this is going to happen differently for each of us. Though the balancing act, and really the real clarity with all of this, is a redefining with what partnership truly means. What is partnership? What is relationship of any kind and any sort? Other than a meeting of energies for a moment in time, that moment in time may expand a longer period or a shorter period. And a meeting of those energies are bringing, and we're looking to bring the whole of ourselves within that relationship, so that as we come and we can notice and recognize those longings that are inward, that are being projected outward on this being, that can be brought to the surface and vulnerably communicated, vulnerably brought forth and connected on. So that, again, we're not only sitting on the meditation, only looking to find this longing and only doing that, but that is a requirement, that is very much a practice, so that as we engage within the relationship, there can be balance. And within the challenge, or within the arisings of trauma healing and things that will very rapidly heal and be brought to the surface within relationship, that can be done in a way that's graceful. It can be done in a way where there's awareness, right? And with awareness comes willingness and responsibility for each being to recognize that we each have our duty to source where that inner longing is coming from. That inner longing that is then being projected out in this case, potentially the emotional wave that gets really excited about the relationship, but then as you come back down, you see maybe it's being projected from a different place, and then that balancing has to occur, right? So it's important to set up container. It's important to have communication and trust overall in yourself, right? Because the importance of that time alone is so vital in periods especially like this, and all time in relationship, right? If I find why that there is so much difficulty in relationship in these times is because there's too much closeness. There's too much connectivity. There's too much, and it's not true closeness. It's the closeness in regards to physical proximity, in regards to distraction proximity, in regards to, consumptive tendencies. That's where the closeness resides. But so within all that, you have two beings that may be truly wanting to be connected, but that connection can only come when each has actually truly had their time inwardly to connect intimately within themselves, so that when they come together, that intimacy then can be brought forth without fear. Because naturally with intimacy brings vulnerability and challenge, and we each have our traumas and things. We're all not existing in perfect bodies here, right? So this is going to bring up numerous amounts of things, right? But it's really truly a redefining, in my view, of what we're viewing to be partnership in this era, and moving forward, and what does a higher dimensional relationship truly look like. And in my view, it holds both an equal amount of individual sovereignty, right, and knowing and awareness of that you truly are on this journey alone. You really are. We each are on this journey very alone. And yet that knowing and the comfortable peace with that is what makes us most able to interact in relationship and partnership in a truly beautiful way, in a way that really is open to whatever is meant to arise. Because that's really what it is. If a relationship is meant to occur, it's likely going to occur. And there's not much that's going to be able to stop that. And the more we trust in that knowing, and the trust in the peacefulness and the acceptance of that unfolding, then we can see where these things unfold. And where there's resistance, where there's a lot of too much challenge, and an unnecessary amount of challenge, then we can see potentially where there's forcefulness occurring, where there's an unnaturalness arising, and that's generally, again, going to come back from an inner longing that's needing to be fulfilled from something external and not being acknowledged as such. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up, because I do feel that as a definitely an important topic, right? And it goes across the board in all our relationships, not just in our intimate partnerships, because we have a duty to all the relationships we come across to hold the space for them, hold the space for ourselves, and to see that any relationship that comes into our sphere, the more there's a deeper knowing within self and a deeper clarity as to who one truly is. And as we know this, we know what our boundaries are. We know what we are suited for, what we're not suited for. We know how we're best meant to be communicated with, how we like to communicate. These are all things that we simply know in our hearts to be true. And as that becomes more and more a reality and a deeper clarity in knowing, then first of all, vibrationally, you will begin to attract beings that also mirror this. And we could say that there's more and more, but we can say that that's going to be less of a quantity than maybe having many people like this, at least at this period of time. So we recognize the beauty of that quality. And then in the relationships that there's others who are also coming into this, or that we have a duty in it, we feel not necessarily a duty, but at least there's a natural vibrational match for these beings to learn from you and you learn from them and grow together, then there will be a purifying process, right? There's naturally that deconditioning process. It's like, like you come into a relationship, you meet someone in a certain way and in a certain vibration, and you may go through certain waves where you come together and then you move apart and you come together again, or maybe you stay very close for a while. Naturally, there is continual processes of change and transformation. And if both beings are in this space together, then there is hope, for that relationship. There's naturally a vibrational certainty that this relationship can continue. Though, as there isn't that, or as there's resistance, or you're hitting a trauma, or you're hitting something where that energy cannot be worked at for a period of time, then naturally, vibrationally, the distancing will occur. And this goes for every relationship, not just human relationships. This goes for relationship with types of jobs, environments, things you like to do, hobbies, creative projects. There will be natural ebbs and flows based on a vibrational energy that's occurring that will match you with certain things and then dissolve other things, and then match you with new things and dissolve other things. And this happens moment to moment to moment. We cannot get lazy with this. We have to understand it's an ongoing conscious choice, where as we're managing ourselves vibrationally, we will come into the match of the lessons, the people, the things that are meant to bring, to be brought forth. So really what all of this is, in a simplified way, pointing to is that there is only ever yourself. Right, let's really sink into that for a moment. There is only ever yourself. It is only ever yourself everywhere you look. Everywhere you look, everything you interact with, everything you perceive, it is only ever yourself. And so if we come to know this experientially, the way we know this is through the things, you know, because it's easy to say that when we look at a beautiful flower. It's easy to say that when we look at, you know, the peaceful space that we created at home or whatever. It's where we are faced with the challenge. It's where we're faced with the darker emotions or things that reveal the trigger points or specific traumas in the body. It's equally as important, equally as much yourself as everything else. And as long as this is the perception that's held as a practice, this is the practice of treat another as you desire to be treated. That's really what it is. It's seeing everything in your reality, everything that's being perceived as yourself, and as something that you have co-created in some form, right? And the more awake and the more aware you become, the more responsible you feel. So our range of perception of what we conclude to be ourselves broadens. So it's not just our individual circle and friends and things and situations. It's also this collective challenge we're all facing. It's this collective purification we're all going through. It's this collective perception of the world that's in this intense and very crazy situation that, again, as we reside within our own peace and our own clarity, we see truly that everything is really ourselves. And we're not to be the savior. We don't need to save the world. But as we hold the perception that everything is myself in some way, thus, if everything is myself, both the highest evil and the highest good is both a part of that. And if I know it to be myself, then the only thing I can do is accept that, come to peace with it. Because the more I fight aspects of myself, the more there's separation within one's own being. There's nothing actually happening externally. It's all within our own being, our own hologram. And since we're all collectively on this planet, we all collectively magnify the hologram together. So if we are all collectively saying that this virus is going to kill everyone, then yes, the entire planet will crumble. It will completely collapse. But even if just a small amount of us collectively hold the vibration and the intention, the clarity that this virus is a purification tool, it's something that we're going to grow from. We have to keep in mind a virus doesn't want to kill us. It wants to keep us alive. It wants to live in us. That's what bacteria does. So it doesn't actually want to kill us. So us perceiving it in that way is completely illusionary. This is not the truth. The virus wants to be within you, and as your body naturally grows and goes through its evolution, it can hold bacteria that before could kill it and no longer can. This is evolution. So just like in our own experience in our life, if we look at things that are potentially causing resistance, that we want to push away and we want to run from, or we want to ignore, well, naturally, we're treating it in the same way. We're pretending that this challenge doesn't actually want to keep us alive. It doesn't want to keep us evolving and moving into a greater perception and a greater heightened energy of ourselves. But when we accept it, when we see this is just as much myself as eating this beautiful meal, or just meditating in peace, or going for a nice walk, it's all just as much myself. And because it's that, I rest in the safety, in the fearlessness, in the peace within it all. You know, you're like the eye of the storm. Right? And so it's not to say that we are constantly in the ringer. You know, we have to face things with resistance, because we're in time, meaning we're in a physical body, we need our time to be able to process and to move through certain energies, right? It's like, you know, like I've talked to many of you about detox and fasting. If you just go all into detox and fasting, you're going to face yourself with a lot of trouble. You know, it could be potentially life-threatening for some of you if it's really intense of an extreme. But if we go at the pace that feels natural, right, we move into it a little bit more and a little bit more, and we continue to move into it, we find ourselves in a natural trajectory of our balance, right? It's common in personal development that we'll speak of, you know, pushing your comfort zone and facing your fears and no pain, no gain, and, you know, these types of energies. And in many ways, we could say that this is it very much is a very masculine way of looking at our path, thinking that we can come off our natural trajectory. Like if we push so far against our fears and our comfort zones, we'll somehow break the barrier of our fear. It's like we'll come into this endless zone. And in a sense, it's all speaking the same thing. It's all pointing to an enlightenment and awareness of true freedom. It's just pointing at it in a way where thinking that we can run from the infinite. You know, it's like somehow we'll make it outside the infinite. You know, we'll just keep pushing, and then we find ourselves in a lot of struggle. So, so it's just important for us to come into a clarity overall with our natural path, the natural trajectory of our journey. And as we reside on that natural trajectory, we're in a sense of peace. We're in a sense of clarity. You know, we're driving at the pace that we can handle. You know, we're driving at a pace that if something comes on the road or something, you know, we can peacefully navigate this. But if we're going at a pace that is unnatural or feels like it's too much or feels like there's so much happening, then this is naturally where we come backwards, you know. And most of you, I feel like, are doing this, and it's an ongoing reminder to come back into this and see, you know, what this is. Someone asked if missed the morning. No, we pushed everything to this afternoon simply because of time zones and all that. I'm starting to recognize the importance of this. Fiona's asking, well, thanks for bringing that piece up, Fiona, because this is a really good point and just activated a nice trajectory there. 5G and the virus. So I saw a beautiful diagram that was what I was meditating upon for you know, a couple weeks now, because all of us are coming into many different dimensions of perception on this virus as a whole. Like I mentioned, third dimensionally, we come into the fear of the virus, a physical virus that can potentially kill our bodies and make us pass. You know, this is the third dimensional aspect. We need to take our natural precautions there, like we're not meeting in person, we're self-isolating, you know, we're trying to wash our hands more, blah, 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 you know, taking more vitamin C, drinking hot lemon water. These are all things that will support us in this time. This is a third dimensional perspective. Fourth dimensional perspective, we come into a clarity of controlling measures that certainly are on this planet and have been for a very long period of time. The natural trickle-down effect of those controlling powers that look to create other specific things that can, we could say, you know, affect us on certain levels, control our mental, emotional bodies in certain ways. You know, the media is very much driven by emotional authority, not self-emotional authority and fear, and creating potential decision-making out of that energy. So fourth dimensionally, there are many things, and 5G is one of them, yes. 5G is for those who don't know, is a technology that can, 5G originally was patented as a military mind control device or frequency vibratory device that can control bigger groups, say in a protest, and affect the frequency of the brain and frequency of the being to basically dull them down to not be able to protest or not be able to affect things in a certain way. This was the original use for 5G technology. And we can look, you know, there's all kinds of information on the internet where we can find that, and the patents and things that went out by the US military and all that. So now 5G is also being used as a Wi-Fi device for transmitting frequencies faster. I will say that 5G internet is faster, yes, but now we ask, well, what's the cost, right? What is the cost of how that's affecting us in our bodies? And potentially, is there any other agendas behind that? And I would say that there is other agendas behind that, and those agendas are not so beneficial to our bodies, and certainly can weaken our immune systems if we are not in a place where we know and have the tools to take care of ourselves regardless. And this is what's really important. I'll just give you a simple example. I think it was Abraham Hicks. I think it was an Abraham Hicks recording. I've used this example numerous times. Someone asked Abraham Hicks, on a scale from 0 to 100, or basically someone asked, like, how bad is alcohol and cigarettes for me on the spiritual path? And the answer from Abraham Hicks was, on a scale from 0 to 100, 100 being the worst for you and 0 being the least detrimental to your well-being, alcohol and cigarettes make it at like a 14 or 15, whereas guilt or shame is like in the 90s. And so what it was pointing at clearly is that our emotional and energetic vibration, right, the feeling state that we're in, is far more influencing on our well-being than physical substances, physical matter, physical things like this. So what this is really pointing to is that the more in which we're coming into a vibration of our own light, our own love, our own peace, and alignment with our natural self, less and less do physical things within this dimension have as much of a detrimental effect on the system and on your being. And so when it comes to the evolution of technology, I feel like 5G will only be the beginning of certain things that have two very different sides to them. They have one side that could potentially very, very much damage ourselves, damage our body, damage millions, billions, etc. And also are just simply a product of what happens when we move through this evolution of consciousness and evolution of our ascension into higher technology as a mirror of higher consciousness that we're coming into. So 5G and 5D, I do not think are that much different. I do think as we come into this perspective of love and clarity within ourselves, we will find technologies that mimic what we're looking to do with 5G that are much more beneficial for ourselves. And there will be technologies that come into play that can support us in great technological feats, but do not affect our well-being as much because they'll be created from a place of love. They will be created from a place of true intention. And so what we're going through right now and what we'll continue to go through, upwards of the 2050, even beyond, is a changing of the guards, if you will. Right? We're going through a changing of the guards, a changing of leadership, a changing of system dynamics, a changing of what and who and how we have ruled this planet and how we no longer need to rule anything, right? A moving back to circle-based living versus pyramid-based living, hierarchical-based living. So what comes from this and what will naturally be the product of this is in the changing of leadership will come the changing of what we use in our systems, in the creations, in the way that we treat our technology, in the way we build our cities, in the way we interact in our communities and our friends, our family, the internet, everything. Because from a being who's of source and a being who's in alignment with themselves, naturally everything you create, whether you invent a technology, whether you create a piece of music, whether you write a book, or you walk down the street, everything will come from that intention, will come from that creation. So each of us have that duty now, as we continue to come from this, to see what our path is, what our natural journey will be in creating the things that can replace what the old system has been built upon, right? And certainly this is not going to happen overnight, but this is the best that we can do in the light of the situations that are occurring with this, and actually spreading the awareness of the wisdom of what I've just said is likely very important in regards to these technologies moving about, because it will slow them down. It will bring change. It will bring the masses into this information, as they clearly have the studies and the clear scientific backing to give them that logical support to make those decisions as well. There's many dimensions to this. It's quite complex, but we've also seen that it's quite simple, right? That if we are activating our own energetic being, if we're taking our own precautions by connecting to our breath and our own ascension, we are not as much as at risk of the detriments of 5G and really anything else, chemtrails, fluoridated water, all of these things. We are not as much at risk at any of these things. And because of that, we naturally do not want those things, right? We don't care for them. The things we fear are the things that we will still consume, right? And so as we've come to deeper clarity within ourselves, we will draw our boundaries more and more, right? I do not see this necessarily being the most easy battle, and it's not really a battle, but it certainly seems that way in regards to controlling powers that are still going to roll these various things out. But it's simply understanding that vibrationally, the power of our own love, the power of our own peace, and the power of our own compassion is light years more advanced in its potential to make us well and keep us well, regardless of anything really that's arising externally, right? So this can keep us in a balance of knowing our power, yet still remaining in the world, and in the changes that need to be brought forth. Because yes, if we do look at a map, for instance, of where 5G is and the virus, it's very similar. Wuhan, China was a main place in the world for 5G, and Italy has the most 5G out of any country in Europe, or one of the most abending country in Europe. So sometimes these coincidences are just not coincidences, right? We can't be so ignorant to think that everything just somehow lines up in this way, especially when it's to the degree of what it's doing, right? And yeah, so it's an important topic. We have to exist on all the dimensions of this experience, and that's what really makes one masterful. Is we reside in the balance of all of the perceptions. We keep ourselves physically safe. We recognize controlling powers in the system and in the matrix that we exist in, because it very much is, and we exist outside of it altogether because we truly are light. Right? We truly are light. And the spiritual journey is to recognize your light and to become fearless in that light, and to know that death is, to die before you die is awakening. To be fearless and to recognize death is inevitable, but it can happen gracefully. Right? It can happen with purpose, to make this life that was purposeful. Right? So yeah, thanks, Fiona. So anything else that's arising right now? I mean, I've been rambling a lot, so I just want to just leave it open for people. Other people can ramble a little bit. Connect. Just let me know if you can't unmute and you would like to unmute. Oh, there's more questions. So what does circle-based living and pyramid-based living mean? Well, if we just address the pyramid-based hierarchical way of living, this is and we're going to kind of go, everything that I'm speaking of here acts as an activation. So if you stay mindfully aware, mindfully receptive, although I'm speaking a lot, you don't even have to listen to the words. The energy is going to help with the clearing, because we're clearing collective energies right now. And actually, I'm kind of guided. I was thinking about this before, and I'm going to do this now. I would like to just simply do a bit of just ah chanting, using right in the center of the chest. And just make sure everyone's situated. So whether you want to keep the eyes open or closed, we'll just kind of tune into our heart for a second, tune into the natural tones that we'd like to make right now, maybe. And we're going to do a few rolling ah chants together. So we'll breathe in through the nose. And we're going to tune the chant ah through the heart. You can turn your volume down, or I'll keep my mic off maybe. Continuing with that rolling ah chant just in the heart. If those are just tuning in, we're just doing some ah chants. Just tune into what that vibration creates in the body. Continue a few more if you like. Just activate that chant. That's really, in a sense, the supreme chant. And I'm going to go into a few more questions and comments because they're very relevant to the overall topic. Firstly, Lark was asking in another chat here about vibrational tools that can support. So I have the one here, and I was going to talk about it. Many of you already know about liberation and the other remedies. These are perfect tools, in a sense, for protection, mainly because they're tools that are of vibrational essence, and we're looking to connect with ourselves on a vibrational level, but yet also use the physical tools that can support us as well. So shungite is a crystal. Many people are going to wear that around their necks. You can even get clothing, I think, now that has shungite in it. But having shungite around you is going to support in many ways with the protection of EMF radiation and other forms. Now, Liberation has shungite infused within it. The alchemist who created it, created the alchemy with that, among other gems and crystals that can support with this type of vibrational clearing and vibrational protection. So all of the remedies, whether it's Blue Lotus, Liberation, or Redemption, all of them can work in similar ways. But Liberation is one that really can affect and support that. Now, it's not so much the shungite that's going to support you magically by protecting you from 5G. The tool of 5G, the tool of Liberation to support in clearing emotional baggage, or just simply the breath work that you're using, or the methods that I've given, or other methods that you're using on your path. These are all going to be tools that are going to release the baggage from your being. To become aware of your light body and to know that you truly are impenetrable at the core of your being. Your physical body is not, but as we align our physical bodies more and more with our vibrational being, then more and more does the physical body also reflect that. We have to understand that the physical body doesn't actually exist in the way we think it does. If you take a microscope and you zoom into your finger or something, if you keep zooming in, you're only going to see empty space, right? And the universe is 99.9% empty space, and this is the reality of our body. Because we believe potentially our physical body is physical and in this way, and we collectively believe it, it strengthens that energy. So we go at the pace we're naturally meant to align with. But mentors and teachers that I have learned from have turned their physical body into light, because they are light beings. We are all light beings, so we have access to this energy as we apply ourselves in that way. And so the more important element is doing the true inner work, like we've already done many times today, doing the meditative work, coming into the depth of our feelings, experience them fully, feeling them so that they can release, right? Feeling the cathartic nature of certain situations, to allow for the releasing to move, to allow for the movement of energy to be just naturally dissolved out of our being. This is the real importance with the tool like Liberation, right? Not so much the shungite. Becoming lighter, like in our weight of our physical, mental, emotional being, brings us to our light, the inner light in which we are. This is the natural progression of our purification. And this is what we're all underway with, and calls like this will continue to strengthen that. Now, I wanted to get into the topic Ali mentioned about circle-based living versus pyramid-based living. The hierarchical structure that we exist within comes from an inherent programming of control-based energy within this planet that resides with a deep wound towards the true feminine essence of the universe. This planet, many years ago, millions of years ago, had been quarantined and cut off from other aspects of the universe. This entire universe actually did, and there are multiple universes, and they all make a very beautiful pattern, and I can show you actually a picture of what that potentially looks like. But what I'm pointing at is we exist within a universe that has been quarantined and cut off. It's almost like a black hole universe. This planet in particular is a key place of control for this aspect of the universe and for the frequencies that hold that darkness in place. Now, all of that has been, in a certain sense, released, and we're in a time and in a place now where this planet and this sun, our sun, is going to move through the full stellar activation cycle that it's meant to, meaning it's going to ascend and we're all going to move with it, meaning the ones who choose consciously to do that. And so the program that had been instilled for millions upon millions of years on this planet and moved in ways was the typical pyramid black hole structure that is, in a sense, masculine dominated, but it's not necessarily that, but it's just the idea that there is a hierarchy of life. And that hierarchy of life doesn't speak about responsibility, it speaks about value, meaning those at higher levels of the hierarchy are more valued than those at the lower levels of the hierarchy. And within this universe, that has been very much the program. So on this planet, there's much trauma that we are all naturally releasing and healing at this time. around the energy of that hierarchical dominated perception. And the wounds that are held within that bring much of the savior archetype. They bring the victim-victimizer archetype. They bring the better than, less than archetype, the win-loss archetype, basically the red and blue pill like in the Matrix, or the red and blue team on, some sports game or whatever, the red and blue rings in a boxing match. Red and blue is everywhere because these are the fundamental colors that represent the separated opposites of male, female. And it's red or pink. That's really what what it is from the Bible, the original writings in the Bible. Now, so what we're pointing out with all of this is that the hierarchical-based structure is already being dismantled. It already has been dismantled within the energetics of this planet, and that is what this is, the bringing of the new paradigm, the Aquarian age, all of the different perceptions that are in all scriptures. It's the movement back into holistic well-being and living, seeing that if we just for a moment just explore our own perception of what we view to be enlightenment, if we viewed enlightenment to be an end goal, a point where everything ends and everything stops, we dissolve into nothingness, this is just very much that hierarchical type of perception, versus seeing our journey as endless and eternal in every direction, where we live in an infinite universe, meaning if we live in an infinite universe within time and space, you cannot go anywhere. There's nowhere actually to go because there's nowhere you can move. If you're in an infinite space, the only time you can know if you're going to a certain place or moving is when there's a finite destination. There's a finite distance, finite amount of time, right? So within this dimension, we do have those things, yes, that does exist, but in the higher dimensional sense or in a source perception, this is not true. So where this practically brings us, what this practically brings us to, is that it kind of brings us back to what we were perceiving before. We're only ever with ourselves. We cannot run from ourselves. No matter where we go, no matter what we try to do, no matter if we pass in this body, go to another body, we're only ever going to be with ourselves, carrying our karma and our energy with us everywhere we go. And so when we come to that, it's a very humble way of looking at life, where there's no real destination we can get to. There's no real place we need to go. There's nothing we really need to do other than continuing to align ourselves back with Source, the natural flowing Christic river, right? The Christic, the original Christ within. This is the natural trajectory of our journey. And as we align with this, then we will forever be in this ascension, up-leveling, moving through challenges, moving through, new levels in the game, if you will, expanding ourselves in endless ways, and doing so in a way where we still continue to find ourselves in this natural balance. That's what we could say enlightenment on this planet is finding a natural balance to see that, oh, this journey is actually eternal, rather than endlessly trying to rush to some end point or end goal. And that manifests in very, very simple ways, right? That can come out of, a very intense emotion that we may be feeling, and we need to run to the kitchen, because if we have that meal will actually make us feel better, and all of a sudden, all of those problems go away. That's a very small level. That's not small, but that's a small example, or a simple example rather, of how this manifests. There's an external something that if we attain or go to, it's the end point, meaning it's the end point to our current suffering. But this is the endless kind of hamster wheel that we find ourselves in, where we have to come to a balance of recognizing that it is only truly within ourselves that we can resolve anything. And that resolution comes by way of allowing for it to move with this river, move like with ourselves on this river. It's like emotions that arise, they want to just continue moving out of you. They're simply designed as water moving through the river, and if we put something in blocking it, like a rock or a dam, it's just going to stop and start to build up. And so the movement and the openness to all of this, even in this moment, clearing the hierarchical energy, comes by way of moving within your perception to see where you see things as higher or greater than or less than. Do you see the celebrity as more of an idol than the homeless person? Do you see the destination in a couple of months after we get through this challenge better than where we're at now? Right? Do you see a place in your future where you're going to be way better off, way more aligned than the way that you are now? It's not to say that we are not existing within time and space, where yes, we may come to a place where we have maybe more money, or we have, I don't know, more friends, or we're doing a project and it's evolved in a greater way. Though it's not going to necessarily change the state we're existing in. It's not going to determine the state we're existing in. And I'm sure we've experienced this in some ways. And someone's mentioning duality. Yes, this is duality. Everything in existence is going to be dual in its nature, because it's just manifesting itself in its opposites. And this is, of course, why we have existence. Of course, if everything was just ourselves, and we knew this absolutely to be the truth, then, well, you know, from a certain perspective, this would be the true ascension. We would come to a true remembrance of ourselves in the fullest light, and then we would descend upon within creation again, because it's eternal. And this, in many ways, is the journey that we're all experiencing now. Is a journey to an endless end, where we will get to an end, but yet it's endlessly returning. So it's a funny dynamic. Now, I did want to show you guys a picture. It's just coming to me now, so we'll just kind of get into this. I'm going to share my screen with all of you. So we're looking at a picture of various universes. So each of the core universes are called an akasha, and that's only just one small. So each of this tree of life structure is repeated endlessly. And so at the base level, it's an akasha, and that akasha is basically what we could kind of call a universe in simple terms, of where basically of where we exist. And each one of those conjuncts with 4 others, which conjuncts then a main universe, or a main kosminya or kosmaya, and then that is created in the full kind of spectrum of the God world, right, of the true source of creation. And so we're not going to get into this too much, but really what we're looking at is that this universe is vastly large, you know, in every dimension. So even what we perceive to be the end of our own universe is just the beginning of a new one, right? Like here, the God world. Right. So so what you just saw, that picture that had endless universes in it, is also a piece of another level of what we call the Akasha A, or the Akasha A, which is the highest God world, the highest version of our source creation. Right. This is in a sense the geometry of the universe, or the anatomy of the universe, which we have within our being. So everything that we're perceiving within all this is actually within our own being, and we can meditate upon this. Right. And we're going to meditate upon this as we finish today on just a couple symbols that will, in a certain sense, these symbols can support us in accessing this information without necessarily consciously needing to know it, or needing to like study these diagrams per se, although that is also recommended. This diagram here. So for now, is there any other comments, questions? You know, we're getting into a lot of things, some things I didn't expect, but what can you ever expect in these types of calls? I'm just chatting. Reminds me of Kabbalah. Yes. So this tree of life is where the Kabbalah comes from, but the Kabbalah is only using 10 Sephiroth, and the 10 Sephiroth are actually misaligned a little bit in their geometries. Much of the spiritual teachings on this planet, in so many ways, have been I wouldn't say co-opted, but they've certainly been, there's a lot of distortion in many of them. Of course, the source of existence is within everything. So as we tune to our own energy and our own intuition, we'll be able to navigate them. But it is important for us also to have the proper teachings that represent and align back with true source. And this is why I look to keep things as simple as possible, so that we can really tune to the vibration of things rather than, you know, the real complexity and all that. And it's like what we mentioned about coronavirus. I mean, if we get into the conspiracy talk, we can get into endless discussions about what is what and who is what and what's doing what. And to be honest, I've probably seen every possible concept, idea, opinion, perspective that could possibly exist about coronavirus on social media and everywhere, that somehow has some sort of scientific backing, pretty much backing every one of those perceptions. So at a certain point, we have to come back to ourselves. Come back to what we view to be true, and what we see to be true within ourselves. So I'll just make sure I'm just watching the chat, or if anyone wants to share anything vocally as well, because we will close with just some simple meditations to help us align. I'm just going to stop the screen share for a moment, just check here. Cool. So if there's no other questions, we will finish with this meditation here, which is going to be quite nice. You guys will have access to these diagrams as well. These are not my diagrams, of course. These are part of the Kaline Science Wisdom, which it's not as readily available these days, but it is. And so I want to make sure I didn't skip any questions. Circle-based living. Mary, did you have a question? I'm not sure if that meant you had a question. Oh, I'm gonna unmute you. Okay, I can't unmute you. It's okay. All right. Okay, we're gonna dive into this. Let me share my screen again. So we're gonna do a meditation where we're gonna simply just breathe in this code. You guys will have access to it later. I'll send it to you guys. It's called the Feel Good Code, or the Alariye Rashatan. And this code is a universal code in which really can activate many things within our being. And so we can just start by just simply observing the code. Just looking at the code and just feeling into the vibrational power it has, the frequency it holds, and just beginning to become silent within the mind to focus on the center on it. And we're going to do this 3 times. We're going to do what's called a pineal induction. Actually, you can do it as many times as you want, but I will show you how to do it initially. Pineal induction is basically how we infuse an energy or a code within our energy field, within our pineal gland. So the focus will be between the center of the forehead and near the eyebrows. And we'll just breathe in through the nose pretty rapidly, quickly in through the nose, and then you're going to exhale it, expanding the breath out through the mouth. Just around the body, almost like you're expanding it within the entirety of your being. So quickly in through the nose to the center of the forehead, and then out everywhere in every direction. It's almost like you're expanding the symbol out throughout you, like it's a part of your anatomy and your light body. So you can do that as many times as you feel, and then you can begin to just breathe it slowly in through the nose, slowly out, down through the body. And whatever you feel complete with that, you can just naturally close the eyes. You can open your eyes again if you want to take a look at it. And we just want to come into a perception of our original intention with today, and just the intention overall, our energy field, the moment. And feeling how this code can magnify that, can reveal certain things to you, can connect you back to your original higher self, your inner self. We will activate this connection to our inner self here. And really slow down the breath. And if we're still connected to the breath, breathing in that vitality through every aspect of your body and your being. Creating a layer of protection, igniting a sense of fearlessness within your body. Fearlessness that simply comes back to connection of peacefulness, contentment. There's a silence here, but yet a fullness and openness. As we're connected to the breath and the simple awareness, seeing if you can move this symbol and just your simple perception through the entirety of your body from head to toe. As you're breathing in, kind of breathing in from the earth and moving up through your energy field through the entirety of your body towards above your head, connecting in a sense to the core of the universe. And as you exhale down, you're exhaling down through the body. And it's as if you're kind of moving this symbol and your awareness, the breath, perception, just gently throughout the entirety of your body. Feeling into any areas where you feel any density, any feelings, anything at all, just continuing to move up through and down through. Fully release from the breath whenever you feel complete here. Just coming into watching, you may be observing natural energies, various things arising in the body. Open our eyes whenever we feel ready. Just coming back as you naturally feel. Just wanting to show one more diagram for the moment. So here we'll find ourselves looking at the 12-tree Cathar grid within our body. So what we had just observed, that kind of tree of life type image, which tree of life is basically the structure of the universe that also exists within our individual anatomy, because we are the universe, right? We are this angelic human anatomy, and we have endless potential, infinite potential. And so this structure that we're looking at, the Cathar centers, exists within our body at certain points. And so the breath method that we were just doing, when we're breathing up through the body and down through the body, there's a beautiful visualization we can do where, and not even necessarily a visualization, because it gets very much a practical experience, where as we're breathing the energy and the breath through these points of our body as we move up, and through these points of the body as we move down. And as we do that, as you get more energetically sensitive, you'll be able to feel where there may be blocks in any of these specific points. And as you're continuing to focus the breath, you're just continuing to purify these channels, right? You're basically like starting to move this energy through these channels. So this Cathar grid diagram I can send to you guys. You guys can have this for reference. But eventually, yeah, you'll be able to start kind of just visualizing this within your being, within your body, and you can feel it. I can feel it right now. And as you move it, you'll be able to just perceive and be able to move energy and start to explore what each of these centers are, because each of these centers are very specific to certain aspects of your life, certain areas of your experience, certain energies of how you experience your day-to-day. And they exist on all 12 of the manifested dimensions in which this body existed, right? So right now we're existing within these lower dimensional fields of 1, 2, and 3, right? And moving into higher realms is the process we're all unfolding now. So understanding this diagram is quite important, and just being able to, just at least initially being able to breathe through your body and move the energy through the body, you'll begin to start feeling into what we call miasms, energetic miasms. And miasms are like points in the body where there's kind of like knots, like energy knots. And those energy knots hold and limit energy flow by going in a very seamless and kind of natural way. Okay? So I'm going to send you these diagrams just to continue with the meditation that we did today of just simply using the breath. I'm keeping it as simple as possible, because as you're doing this, you will have the natural intuition, the natural clarity to kind of move energy through you and to navigate your own energy body, your own being with the breath, and then naturally how that connects with the external world, you know, how that connects with what's happening around you and all of this. Right? So I'll leave it open again. If there's any more comments, questions, shares of the crew who's here. And that can be on chat, or it can be just if you want to share on with your mic. Otherwise, we will come to a close with this session. What we're going to do is, I'd like to gather again at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, and we'll gather back in the Zoom to have more of a discussion, just kind of connect. I would suggest if you can do some of the meditation that we did already today, just do that again, at least one, if not 2 times. And and just kind of see and feel into what's arising for you. And then tonight we'll come and gather again. We'll have kind of an open discussion, connection with each other. And then I'm not sure if I'm going to do the sound healing on the Zoom. I may do it on Facebook because it may have better audio, but I'll communicate that with everyone in the Zoom when we connect later at 6:30 p.m. It'll be the same link. We're going to use the same link. And yeah, if anything else comes up again or during that time, let me know. All right? Blessings, everyone. Enjoy your afternoon. 6:30 p.m. Eastern. Yep, Isabella, that's correct. And it'll be right in the same group. See you guys.